Emma Louise Miller walked the same dusty road to school every morning, her worn canvas shoes kicking up small clouds of dirt with each step. At 12 years old, she had already learned to mend her own clothes and stretch every dollar her grandmother could spare. Her faded blue dress, carefully patched at the elbows, was clean and pressed, a testament to the pride her grandmother had instilled in her despite their circumstances. Emma's honey-colored hair was always neatly braided, and her brown eyes held a brightness that poverty had never managed to dim. She carried her schoolbooks in a canvas bag that had once held flour, and her lunch was often just a biscuit wrapped in wax paper. The small farming town of Millerville knew Emma as that sweet Miller girl, the one whose grandmother cleaned houses and took in washing to make ends meet after Emma's parents died in a car accident 3 years earlier. Despite their struggles, or perhaps because of them, Emma had developed an instinct for noticing when others needed help. That Tuesday morning, as autumn painted the maple trees in shades of gold and crimson, Emma saw him. An elderly man stood at the corner of Main Street and Elm, gripping a worn wooden walking stick with gnarled hands. He wore simple farmer's overalls, faded from years of washing, and a plaid flannel shirt that had seen better decades. His white hair stuck out from beneath a weathered cap, and thick glasses perched on his nose made his eyes look larger and more vulnerable. The intersection was always busy during morning rush hour, with trucks hauling grain to the elevator and folks heading to work in the next town over. The old man seemed overwhelmed by the traffic, starting to step into the street only to retreat back to the sidewalk when a pickup truck rumbled past. Emma recognized him as Walter Hutchins, though she'd never spoken to him. Everyone in town knew old Walt, the hermit who lived in the rundown farmhouse on the outskirts of Millerville. Children whispered stories about his place, how he never had visitors, never came to town social events, and always paid for his groceries with exact change from a coffee can. Most folks figured he was just another struggling farmer hanging onto his land by his fingernails. "Good morning, Mr. Hutchins," Emma said, approaching with the gentle manner her grandmother had taught her to use with elderly folks. "That's quite a busy street this morning." Walter looked surprised that someone had spoken to him, even more surprised that a child knew his name. "Well, yes. Yes, it is quite busy." His voice carried the slight tremor of advanced age. "Would you like me to help you across?" "I walk this way to school every day." Walter studied her face for a moment, as if kindness was so foreign he wasn't sure how to respond to it. That would be very kind, young lady." Emma offered him her arm, small as it was, and waited patiently as Walter found his balance. Together, they navigated the crosswalk at his slow, careful pace. Emma noticed he favored his left leg and adjusted her steps accordingly. "Thank you, child. What's your name?" "Emma Miller, sir. I live with my grandmother on Sycamore Street." "Ah, yes. Your grandmother is Dorothy Miller. She's done washing for folks in town for years." Emma felt a familiar flush of protective pride. "Yes, sir. She works very hard. Says honest work is nothing to be ashamed of." Walter nodded thoughtfully. "Your grandmother raised you right. Most folks these days are too busy to notice when someone needs help. Grandma always says kindness doesn't cost anything, but it's worth everything." After that morning, Emma made a habit of watching for Mr. Hutchins during her walk to school. He seemed to appreciate the company, and their brief conversations became a pleasant part of her routine. She learned he lived alone and rarely saw anyone from week to week. "Don't you get lonely, Mr. Hutchins?" Emma asked one crisp October morning as they crossed the street together. "I suppose I do sometimes, but most folks have their own troubles. Don't need to be burdened with an old man's concerns." "Everyone needs friends," Emma said simply. "My grandma says loneliness is just friendship waiting to happen." Walter chuckled, the first time Emma had heard him laugh. "Your grandmother is full of wisdom." As the weeks passed, Emma noticed Walter looked increasingly frail. His steps became more hesitant, and some mornings he seemed confused about where he was going. One particularly cold November morning, Emma found Walter sitting on the bench outside, Miller's Hardware, looking lost and shivering without a proper coat. "Mr. Hutchins? Are you all right?" Walter looked up at her with watery eyes. "Emma, child, I'm not sure how I got here. I was going somewhere, but I can't remember where." Emma sat beside him, her young heart aching for this lonely old man. "That's okay. Sometimes we all get turned around. Would you like me to walk you home?" "I don't want to make you late for school." "Learning happens everywhere," Grandma says. "Today I'm learning about taking care of neighbors." Emma helped Walter to his feet, and ignoring the curious stares of passers-by, walked with him the half-mile to his farmhouse. She was surprised to see how run down the property looked up close, peeling paint, sagging porch steps, windows that needed washing. "Thank you, Emma. You're a special child. Mr. Hutchins, would it be all right if I came to check on you sometimes? Just to make sure you're doing okay?" Walter's eyes filled with tears. "I would like that very much." That evening, Emma told her grandmother about Walter's condition. Dorothy Miller, despite her own struggles, immediately began packing a basket with homemade soup and fresh bread. "If that old man is failing, he needs people looking after him. We may not have much, but we've got hearts that work just fine." Over the following weeks, Emma stopped by Walter's house every day after school. She helped him organize his medications, made sure he had groceries, and simply sat with him during the long afternoon hours. Her grandmother often sent meals, refusing to accept any payment. "Kindness isn't a business transaction," Dorothy would say when Walter tried to insist on paying for the food. What Emma didn't know was that Walter Hutchins owned nearly 3,000 acres of the most fertile farmland in the county. For 40 years, he had quietly leased his property to other farmers, living modestly while accumulating considerable wealth. The rundown farmhouse was a choice, not a necessity. Walter had never seen the point of fancy living when he had no one to share it with. Walter had no family, no heirs. His will, gathering dust in a lawyer's office in the county seat, left everything to agricultural charities. But as Emma's daily visits brought light into his lonely world, Walter began to reconsider. One December afternoon, as Emma helped Walter organize his pantry, she found an old photo album hidden behind some canned goods. "Are these pictures of your family, Mr. Hutchins?" Walter's hands shook as he took the album. "My late wife, Sarah. We were married 43 years before she passed. These are pictures of our farm when we were young." Emma looked at the black and white, photographs showing a vibrant farm operation, a beautiful woman in a sundress, and a younger Walter with a confident smile. She was lovely. You must miss her terribly. Every day for the past 8 years. We always wanted children, but it wasn't meant to be. After she died, I just stopped caring about much of anything. Emma studied a picture of Sarah feeding chickens, her face radiant with joy. "I bet she wouldn't want you to stop caring. My mama died when I was 9, but Grandma says the best way to honor people we love is to keep spreading the love they taught us." Walter was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah always said she wished we could have had a granddaughter just like you." The next week, Walter asked Emma to accompany him to town on an unusual errand. "Where are we going, Mr. Hutchins?" "To see a lawyer. I have some business to take care of, and I'd like you there if that's all right." In the lawyer's office, Emma sat quietly, while Walter made changes to his will. She didn't understand all the legal language, but she heard her name mentioned several times. That evening, Walter asked Emma and her grandmother to join him for dinner. He had hired Mrs. Patterson from the church to cook a proper meal, and the old farmhouse felt warmer and more alive than it had in years. "Dorothy, Emma, I want you both to know how much your kindness has meant to me. For the first time since Sarah died, I feel like I have family again." Dorothy patted his hand. "We feel the same way, Walter." Emma talks about you constantly. I've made some arrangements, Walter said carefully. Emma, I want you to know that your college education is taken care of. And Dorothy, there's a fund set up to ensure you never have to worry about money again. Both women protested, but Walter held up his hand. I have more than I could spend in 10 lifetimes and no one to leave it to. You showed me that wealth isn't about money. It's about the richness of human connection. You gave me that gift when I had nothing else. Walter lived for 6 more months, and they were the happiest months he'd had since Sarah's death. Emma continued her daily visits, now bringing friends from school who came to love the gentle old man's stories about farming and life. When Walter passed peacefully in his sleep the following spring, the reading of his will shocked the entire town. In addition to substantial trusts for Emma's education and Dorothy's care, Walter had left his entire farm operation to Emma, to be held in trust until she turned 25. But the most precious gift was a letter Walter had written to Emma. My dear child, you saw value in an old man that no one else noticed. You gave me the greatest treasure, the feeling of being loved and needed. This farm represents a lifetime of work, but more importantly, it represents hope for the future. Use it wisely, share it generously, and remember that the greatest crops we can grow are kindness and compassion. Your loving friend, Walter. 20 years later, Emma Miller Hutchins ran the most successful and innovative farm in 3 counties. She had married a kind man who shared her values, and together they employed dozens of local families. Their farm served as a teaching center for sustainable agriculture and a retreat for troubled youth. But Emma never forgot the lesson Walter had taught her, that the smallest acts of kindness can bloom into the most beautiful legacies. Every morning, as she walked through the fields Walter had left her, Emma remembered a lonely old man who just needed someone to help him cross the street. And she made sure that anyone who needed help always found it on her land. Sometimes the most valuable seeds are planted in the simple soil of human kindness.